the mansion of secrets. The rain came first like a whisper, and then like 1,000 small fists. It hit the glass walls of the Cole estate and ran down in shining rivers, turning the night outside into moving silver. Wind pressed against the tall pines on the hill and made them bow. Far below, the city blinked with distant lights, tiny and cold, like a sky fallen to earth. Adrian Cole stood in front of the window and watched the storm make patterns on the glass. He could see his own shape reflected there, tall, tidy, hard. Lines, and he barely recognized the man who stared back. On the news, the headlines called him a genius, a shark, the youngest billionaire to build a hospitality empire from the ground up. But in that wide pane of glass, he looked like something else, a man alone in a house too big for his voice to fill. Behind him, his office felt like a museum of quiet things. The desk was dark walnut. The books on the shelves wore leather and dust. 2 old clocks, one from Vienna with a swan neck pediment, one from his father's garage, ticked out of rhythm, never quite meeting each other on the same second. He liked it that way. It made the room feel honest. Life never ticked in perfect time. His phone buzzed on the desk. A message from the board's lawyer flashed up. "We can delay the signing until Tuesday. Weather is shutting down the airport anyway, Adrian." Pressed the phone face down. Good. He didn't want another flight tonight. He didn't want another table where people laughed too loudly and watched his every move. The storm was an excuse to be where he secretly liked to be. Here with the clocks and the wind and the strange peace that came with darkness. Another gust of rain rolled through the pines. Somewhere in the east wing, a door thumped. He turned his head, listening. It was not fear. It was habit. When you grew up with little, you learned to listen to your walls and your floors and your ceilings. Houses spoke when they settled, when wind pushed them, when footsteps crossed them. This house spoke all the time, but it had its own rules. Rule 1. Staff moved like shadows. Rule 2. Privacy was a locked door. Rule 3. When Adrian wanted to be alone, he was alone. He had made those rules. He had also made the house. He had told the architect, "Build me something that looks like it could sail." So the estate became a ship set on a hill, glass like sails, stone like hull, wood like long decks. At night, the lighting floated along the edges of hallways and stairs as if little lanterns hung along a ship's rail. He took a breath, turned away from the window, and reached for the lamp. The warm pool of light spilled across the desk, touching a silver picture frame he never turned face up. He thought of his mother's handwriting, of his father's hands stained with engine oil, of a tiny apartment above a shop that sold second-hand, radios and watches. He thought of a boy who used to take broken watches apart just to hear them breathe. The intercom beeped softly. "Mr. Cole?" The voice belonged to Mrs. Hargrove, the head housekeeper. She had managed rich houses since before Adrian had his first bank account, and had never lost the habit of making her questions sound like statements. "Yes?" "The night staff has arrived, but the road is flooding near the east gate. Should we ask the junior to stay until the storm ends?" "The junior?" "New girl on linens. Started last week. Small, quiet, polite as sunrise. Name is Lena." Adrian let the name sit in the air a moment. He imagined it spelled in small, careful letters. Then he said, "Keep her inside. No one drives in this." "Very good, sir." The intercom clicked off. He stood there in the soft cone of light and listened to the house again. The hum of the elevator, the sigh of vents, the nervous chatter of the trees in the wind. Somewhere down on the service level, a cartwheel rattled and a young voice apologized. To no one. It was a tiny sound in a big night, but he heard it. Sometimes, when he could not sleep, he walked the corridors and let little sounds anchor him to the world. He did not mean to meet her that night. He did not plan the study door to open or the power to go out, or the music to be found in silence. He only meant to finish a letter and drink a cup of tea. In the service corridor below, Lena Morales pushed her cart with both hands and tried not to laugh at herself. Everything in the Cole estate shone, even the parts no one saw. The linen room smelled of sun-warmed cotton and lemon. The laundry machines purred like big cats. Even the mop sinks were beautiful, all steel and clean angles and water that ran hot at once. "Excuse me," she whispered to the empty hall, because it made her feel steady to sound polite. The storm had pinned the entire valley under a heavy sky, and the roar of rain felt louder in these rooms. It filled her ears. It filled her chest. It made her think of long afternoons back home when her mother wrapped the open windows with plastic to keep the wind from sneaking in. Home was not far in miles, but it felt far in ways that made her throat tight. A basement studio with a couch that folded into a bed, a tiny kitchen that was mostly a kettle. A voice on her phone that said, "I'm okay, Nina, don't worry about me." Her mother never told her when she felt weak. She saved her worry for private, the way mothers do. The way Lena was learning to do, too. She had turned 21 2 months ago and celebrated with a cupcake from the bakery where she worked mornings before this job. The cupcake had a single candle. She had watched the flame for a long time before blowing it out. "Be brave," she had told herself. She breathed in, counted 4, breathed out, counted 6, the way the nurse at the clinic had taught her for steady hands. Then she checked her list. Tonight's tasks were simple: master suite, fresh linens, guest library, dust and straighten, study, light tidy, no desk papers, West Hall, wipe the glass, always the glass. Mrs. Hargrove had walked her through every room on her first day and gave her the rules as if handing her a necklace of small stones. "Walk soft," she said. "Look down unless spoken to. Don't comment on what you see. Don't guess what you don't understand. Never pass the thresholds that are locked." Yes, Lena had said every time. She meant it. The job was a blessing. The pay was steady. The hours were heavy but kind. She got to send money home on Sundays. She wrote the amount on a slip of paper and tucked it under the ceramic sparrow that sat by her mother's bed. Now she pushed the cart to the service elevator and pressed the button for level 3. The elevator hummed, bright and lit and warm compared to the hall of rain outside the glass. When the doors opened, the difference hit her like a small shock. The public corridor was quiet and gold. Lights under the handrails glowed like lines on a map. Big paintings floated on the walls. The floor under her feet was a gray that looked like fog trapped in stone. She moved toward the master suite. The door recognized her badge with a soft click. Inside, the room felt like a morning even though it was night. The bed looked like a cloud that needed fixing. The air smelled faintly of cedar and white tea. Through the far glass, lightning walked along the horizon. Lena worked the way she did everything, careful, quick, with both hands in the task. She stripped the bed and made it up again, folded hospital corners the way she had practiced in the training room downstairs. She pressed the bedspread smooth with both palms and stood back. The storm outside gave the glass a skin of water, and the city lights smeared into long lines of gold. She told herself not to stare. She stared anyway. It was so far from the streets she grew up on that it felt like a made-up place. "Keep moving," she whispered. She took her duster and her claws and the small bottle of lemon oil and crossed the hall to the study. Mrs. Hargrove had made a shape with her mouth on that first tour when they passed this door. "Only the edges," she had said. "The desk is his heart." She had tapped her own chest. "You don't touch a man's heart unless he hands it to you." Lena had nodded. Now she slipped inside and kept to the edges. The study, even empty, made her feel as if she should straighten her shoulders and mind her words. Dark shelves rose from floor to ceiling. There were more clocks here than in any other room. Not loud clocks, not fancy clocks, but old ones that ticked with little breathy sounds. A brass meter on the wall said barometer, and its needle trembled near stormy. She smiled at it, like it had said something honest. On the desk, a silver frame lay face down. She stopped her eyes before they could reach for it. She dusted the shelf tops, wiped the window handles, straightened 3 books by height. There was a small scratch on the wood near the corner. It was the kind of scratch someone made with a wedding ring or a key when they were thinking too hard. Her fingers hovered over it. The urge to fix small things lived in her bones. She rubbed it gently with the tiniest bit of lemon oil and watched the scratch soften. It did not vanish. It only learned how to belong. Another roll of thunder walked across the roof. The lights hummed. They flickered. They held. Lena glanced at the ceiling and told the storm to choose a lane. She had learned to talk to helpless things so they could obey. She turned to leave. The door opened first. Adrian stepped in with an umbrella still wet from the balcony and an apology in his eyes that didn't make it to his mouth. He stopped when he saw her. She stopped when she saw him. For a single slow second, the room had 2 walls of air, and they stood at its corners. Lena's brain, always ready, offered her the rule. Look down unless spoken to. Her eyes obeyed. She smoothed the cloth in her hand, which did not need smoothing. Adrian took in several things at once because that was how his mind was built. He noticed the lemon in the air. He noticed the small scratch at the desk corner had darkened and lay quiet now, not white and angry. He noticed the girl's shoes were practical and clean, and that her hands, though nervous, did not tremble. He also noticed that she had placed the duster on the cart bristles down, because she did not like dust touching the floor. "What did Mrs. Hargrove tell you about? This room?" he asked, and the question came out softer than he had meant to ask it. "That it is your study, sir," she said, eyes lowered. "Only the edges." "And the desk?" "The desk is your heart," she said. "I don't touch." He wondered if he had ever liked anyone more after their first sentence. "And yet," he said, "the scratch is less." Her cheeks warmed. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have." "The oil was—" "It's better," he said lightly. "Thank you." She nodded. The storm pushed against the glass and made the pine shadows slide across the floor like dark water. Another long sound of thunder, closer now. The lights shuddered, went dim, brightened, went dark. The house let out a small sigh as the electricity died. Then emergency strips lit the floor with a thin white glow, just enough to show edges and not enough to chase shadows. The clocks clicked on, steady as breath. Somewhere far across the estate, a generator coughed and came to life, feeding the kitchens and the security office and the staff quarters. The study did not have a line to that hum. It settled into low darkness, all gold light sucked away by rain. "It's all right," Adrian said in a voice that surprised them both. He sounded like a man who had calmed children in storms before. He had not. Not since he was a child himself. "Yes, sir," Lena said, and then laughed once, a small, shy spark in the dark. "It's only the rain." He found the drawer where he kept the matches and the brass candlesticks his mother had liked because they were simple. He stuck 2 candles into their cups and lit them. Flame lifted the room in soft gold. It made the wood warm and the glass gentler, turned the edges of furniture into something that wanted to be touched. "Will the elevator work?" she asked. "Not when it storms like this," he said. "It shuts itself to be safe. The stairwell lights will be on, but the service hall at the far end has a way of collecting water." He listened. The roof took a breath and exhaled more. Rain. "We should wait." She nodded again. The word wait meant many things. Don't panic. Don't run. Don't choose badly because you are afraid. She held the duster close to her apron like a schoolchild holding a book. Her hair, pulled back in a simple twist, had let a few curls loose, and they framed her face like tiny question marks. "You can sit," he said. "Or stand, if that's better." Standing is fine. She meant it. Sitting in a room like this felt like a lie. He placed one candle on the corner of the desk and one by the old Vienna clock. He put the wet umbrella in the stand and watched. Water dripped from its edge like a slow metronome. The study went quiet, as if waiting for its cue. "What's your name?" he asked. His voice was calm, the way rivers look calm when they are deep. "Lena Morales." "How long have you worked here, Lena?" 8 days, sir." "Long enough to learn the rules," he said. "Yes, sir." She wanted to add that she liked the sound of the house at night, that the service corridors hummed a tune she could almost sing along to, that Mrs. Hargrove walked like a ship's captain and she felt safe when she saw her, but she said none of that. Rules were also about the size of answers you gave. He moved behind the desk and then stopped as if the desk itself had called him rude. He gestured to the chair by the window. "Please," he said, "I won't put you to work during a storm." She hesitated and then sat on the very edge of the chair, hands folded in her lap. The candlelight made a gold rim around her, like a frame around a painting. He had seen paintings in museums that tried to catch this exact light and never quite did. "Where were you before here?" he asked. "If you don't mind." "Bakery on River Road," she said. "Early mornings, this at night." "Long days," he said. "Worth it," she said. "I send money home." He did not ask where home was. He had learned that the word home could make a person either smile or break. Thunder rolled again, further now. The storm was moving across the hill toward the valley. The pines scraped the air and let it go. Adrian tilted his head and listened, then smiled without showing teeth. "It will pass," he said. "How can you tell?" "The house feels different when the worst is over," he said, and realized as he said it that he sounded like his father. His father had said things like, "The engine runs easier when it forgives you." When Adrian was a boy, he did not understand how machines could forgive. When he grew older, he learned that sometimes forgiveness looked like a machine doing its work without complaint after you had done yours. Her eyes lifted for a moment at the sound of his voice when it softened like that. Then she dropped them again, quickly, the way people do when they fear they have stared too long at the sun. He wanted to ask her 100 small questions. What time do you wake? What music does the bakery use before dawn? Do you prefer lemon, oil, or orange? Do you know you place the duster bristles down because your heart is kind? He asked none of those. He asked something else. Do storms scare you? They used to, she said. When I was small, my mother covered the windows with plastic and tape to keep out the water. The wind made the plastic breathe in and out like a big chest. I did not like that. She smiled, not at him, but at the memory of the noise. Now storms make me think of sleep. Sleep? He asked. At our house, after the plastic went up, she made hot tea and told stories and put a blanket over, our heads like a tent. The rain made a sound like a drum. You listen long enough and you get heavy. She shrugged. Maybe not here. Here it sounds like the ocean. He looked out at the glass where rain slid in sheets. We designed it that way, he said, to sound like water. You did? She looked up before she could stop herself. There it was again, that lift of her gaze like a bird testing air. I told the architect I wanted a ship, he said. He gave me a ship. It is beautiful. She said it simply, without reaching for the fancy words she did not need. He felt the compliment land not on his pride, but on the small boy in him who had built a fort under a table and called it a cabin at sea. He cleared his throat and coughed up a more practical question. Have they shown you the emergency candles on every floor? Yes, sir. And the stairwells? Yes. Good. He found himself wanting to tell her about the hidden room behind the bookcase. It was silly, a private hobby space, but storms made people brave in small ways. He ran his finger along the edge of the shelf that hid the latch and did not press it. Not yet. The Vienna clock ticked at a calm pace, as if it had chosen not to hurry just because the wind did. The brass barometer on the wall had lifted its needle a hair off stormy. Candle wax pooled at the lip of the cups and sent thin streams down the stems. "Mr. Cole?" she said quietly, as if the house itself might be sleeping. "Should I wait here or in the service hall?" "Here," he said without thinking. "It's warmer. And if the elevator tries to wake up while the power is unstable, the service hall can be unreliable." She nodded. She believed him. Her hands unclasped and clasped again. She looked at the window and breathed with the storm. He watched her without staring, the way you watch something fragile in case it needs catching. The silence was not empty. It was full of small sounds, the clock heartbeats, the faint drum of rain, the shy whistle that came from one window latch that needed oil. He had meant to fix that. He would fix that tomorrow. "Would you like tea?" he asked. "I don't want to trouble." "It's not trouble," he said. "I'll make it." He went to the sideboard where a kettle waited like a good soldier. No power meant no induction heat, but the small backup line to the gas range still worked. He lit it with a match and listened to the tiny flame catch. He took down 2 white cups and a jar of loose chamomile. The smell lifted like a field in summer and made the study think of sunlight even in the dark. He poured, waited, poured again. The tea breathed in the cups. He carried one to her and set it on the little table by the chair. "Thank you," she said. She held the cup with both hands, the way people who are careful hold warm things. She blew across the top, watched the steam waver, and took a small sip. It was the kind of quiet that heals something you did not know was bent. "May I ask a question?" she said after a time. "Yes." "Why do you have 2 clocks that do not agree?" She pointed with her chin at the Vienna clock and the small, square one from a garage somewhere in the story of a boy. "My grandmother used to make me set every clock the same so we were not late." He laughed softly. It startled him. He did not often hear his own laugh when no one else was around. "Because I like the space between their seconds," he said. "It sounds like a conversation." "A conversation," she said, and the word rolled in her mouth like a marble. "What do they say?" "The Vienna says, be elegant. Keep time like a gentleman." The little one says, "Be honest. I may be a second off, but I will never pretend." She smiled. It changed her whole face. It made her eyes bright and her mouth soft and put a dimple near one cheek that looked like a small secret. "I like the honest one," she said. "I thought you might," he said. Another breath of wind. Another slow roll of thunder. The emergency strips along the floor blinked and held. The rain began to thin. Not stop, but thin. The barometer needle moved again, almost nothing, but enough to feel like a promise. "Do you read?" he asked, and then felt foolish. Of course she read. She worked 2 jobs and sent money home and learned new rules every week. She could read a room faster than his executives. He tried again. "Do you like books?" "Yes," she said, "but mostly I like the feeling when a book ends and you lie there and listen to your own chest and it is saying something new." He glanced at the shelf above his desk. There was a slim black volume there he had held too many times. "Take one," he said, surprising himself. "Borrow it, I mean." "Oh, no, sir. I can't. Mrs. Hargrove—" "I'll tell Mrs. Hargrove," he said. "She will scold me and then make you tea and send you home with 3 more. Lena's mouth opened to protest again, and then she closed it. She had learned when yes was a wiser word than no. She stood, moved to the shelf slowly as if the floor might object, and looked at the spines. Her fingers did not touch. They hovered. She tilted her head and read the titles like they were names of stars. "Choose with your ear," he said. "Say the names in your head and take the one that sounds like it has the right shoes on." She laughed again, then looked shy about it. She picked a small book with a blue cloth cover and gold letters. "The Light in the Orchard." She held it against her chest as if it were warm. "Good shoes," he said. A sudden line of white cracked the sky beyond the glass. The thunder that followed was not a roll. It was a shout. The house did not flinch. The candle flames bent and then stood straight again. She looked at the window and then back at him. "Do you ever get used to it up here?" "To the storm?" he asked. "To the space," she said. She gestured gently, taking in the room, the long hallway, the idea of a house that could hold a hotel inside it. "To the way everything is." "Wide?" He let the question settle. "No," he said. "I don't want to." For a moment, they simply breathed. The clocks kept talking. The tea cooled. The rain traced new paths down the glass, thin and silver now like strings of a harp. From the far corridor came the faint click of the elevator trying to wake. It failed, slept, tried again, then decided to sulk. The generator, steady and low, sent its hum across the belly of the house. "Thank you for the tea," she said at last. "And the book, and the candle." "You're welcome," he said. "You handled the storm well?" "I've had practice." He nodded, and before he could think of a practical sentence to break the softness of the moment, a strange urge walked through him. To wind the old gramophone in the corner and let it scratch out something gentle. It did not need electricity. It only needed a hand that believed in slow music. He crossed to the corner and lifted the lid. The brass horn looked like a flower cupping its ear. He took a record from its sleeve, one he loved because it had a little crack that made the waltz wobble, and set it on the turntable. He wound the key, placed the needle, and listened. The sound rose, small at first, like a moth's wing. Then it filled the study, not loud but present, just a simple melody that made time lean back and close its eyes. Candlelight made two shadows taller than the people who owned them. He did not offer a hand. He did not step toward her. He let the music be its own kind of bridge. She sat very still with the book held close. Her eyes watched the slow spin of black vinyl, and he watched the way the flame rimmed her profile in gold. Outside, the wind softened. The pines let go of their worry. The house took a deeper breath. "I should go check the hall," she said after a while, as if remembering the world. "See if the water is coming in under the service door." "Of course," he said. He closed. The gramophone lid and the waltz fell back into its shell, still humming a little in the air. "Take the south stair. It stays dry. The north stair hoards puddles." She stood, placed the cup on the table exactly in the center of the ring the saucer had made, and took her duster and the book. She moved toward the door and then paused, as if the room itself had tugged her sleeve. "Mr. Cole?" she said. Her voice was steady and simple. "The scratch on your desk. It looks like it belongs now. Not everything needs to disappear to be good." He felt the sentence pass through him, and find the little boy in the watch shop and the young man at courts, and tables who had sanded his hurt until it gleamed. He nodded once. "Thank you," he said. "For saying that." She gave him a small smile that was not a servant's smile. It was a human one. Then she opened the door. The hallway waited, quiet and long, lit by low white strips that made it look like a runway for soft feet. The storm, done with its shouting, had decided to sing. "Be careful," he said. "I will," she answered. The door clicked shut. Adrian stood for a long time with the candles and the clocks and the scent of lemon and tea and rain. The house listened to itself settle. The scratch on the desk lay easy under a thin sheen of oil. The two clocks still argued politely about the second. Somewhere under his ribs, something that had been tight for years loosened a notch. He blew out one candle. The smoke curled like a question in the air. In the corridor, Lena moved along the edge of the light, the book hugged to her side, the duster in her hand like a little flag. At the service stair, she paused and pressed her palm to the cool rail. Thunder murmured like a story told by someone sleepy. She began to descend, steps careful, shoulders squared. Halfway down, the elevator tried one last time to wake. It hushed itself. The storm drew a final line of silver down the glass in the West Hall, and then began, at last, to let the night be still. In the study, Adrian turned the silver frame face up and looked at the photo for the first time in a long while. Then he turned it face down again and smiled at the not-quite-silent room. The clocks kept time. The house kept its secrets. And somewhere between a waltz and a candle, a night had changed direction without either of them naming it. A night that changed everything. The rain slowed to a softer rhythm. No longer fists against the glass, but fingers, tracing lines down the tall windows. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the Cole estate like a heartbeat too strong to quiet. In the wide halls, lights flickered back to life. The power hummed into the walls, and chandeliers overhead blinked awake as though they had been startled from sleep. Lena walked the south stair carefully, holding her little book against her chest. Each step clicked gently beneath her shoes, and every sound seemed too loud in the silence that followed the storm. She could still feel the warmth of the candle-lit study in her skin, still hear the faint crackle of the gramophone's waltz circling in her ears. When she reached the service hall, water had indeed crept in beneath the steel door, forming a shallow pool across the tiles. She rolled her cart to block the entrance, fetched towels from the linen pile, and began mopping up with small, precise movements. Each time her cloth soaked through, she wrung it out with her slender fingers, lips pressed tight as though she could squeeze the storm from her own body. But she was not alone. The meeting again. Adrian Cole appeared at the end of the hallway, his figure half-shadowed against the glow of restored lights. His shirt was undone at the collar, his sleeves rolled above his wrists. A man who looked less like the billionaire people whispered about and more like a weary traveler who had stumbled. "Home? You shouldn't be down here alone," he said softly. His voice carried, but not with command. It was concern. Lena startled, clutching the damp towel. "It's fine, sir. Just a little water. I'll clean it." Adrian's eyes moved over the scene, the pool of storm water, the girl kneeling in it. With nothing but a towel and determination, her hair damp from the humidity, her cheeks flushed. He was struck by the picture of resilience. Most people in his house moved carefully, so as not to dirty their shoes. She seemed ready to wring the entire storm out of the world with her bare hands. Without another word, Adrian stepped closer, bent down and took the towel from her. His fingers brushed hers, warm, strong, lingering longer than polite. "I'll help," he said. Her eyes widened. "No, sir, you can't." "Why not?" His lips curved faintly, a smile without arrogance. "Do you think I've never mopped a floor?" The truth was, he hadn't. Not since he was a boy in his father's garage, wiping oil and dust so his mother wouldn't scold them. But he remembered it now. The rhythm of squeezing cloth. The satisfaction of a clean surface. He knelt beside her, dipped the towel into the water, and pressed it to the tiles. The air between them shifted. They worked in silence, side by side, the storm dripping steadily behind the door. At first, Lena avoided his gaze, embarrassed by his presence. But then she noticed how he wrung the towel, clumsy but earnest, and how the water stained his cuffs. He looked less like a man who owned the world and more like a man who wanted to belong to something simple. Her lips trembled into the smallest of smiles. The conversation. When the last of the water was gone, Adrian leaned back on his heels, breathing softly, and glanced at her. "You make this place human," he said suddenly. Lena blinked. "What do you mean?" "Everyone else moves like they're afraid of breaking the glass," he replied. "But you fix things. Even the scratches on desks." She looked down, cheeks burning. "It's just my job." "No," he said firmly, his voice quiet but carrying weight. "It's who you are." She hugged the book tighter to her chest. His words were dangerous, too gentle, too close. "Why do you stay here so late?" he asked. "Most people would have run when the storm came." She hesitated. The truth slipped out like a secret she couldn't hold. "Because running doesn't fix anything." Their eyes met then, and in that locked gaze was a pull neither could deny: the dance. In the silence, faintly, they could still hear the echo of the waltz from the gramophone upstairs, its melody looping in memory. Adrian tilted his head slightly. "Do you like music?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered, "but I've never danced." He rose, brushing water from his hands, and extended one palm toward her. "Then tonight is your first." Her breath caught. She looked at his hand, broad and steady, offered like an invitation and a test all at once. Everything in her training screamed, decline, keep distance, keep rules. But something in her heart ached to say yes, just once, before the world reminded her of her place. She placed her hand in his. Adrian lifted her gently to her feet. The service hall, lit by strips of soft light, became their ballroom. He placed her other hand on his shoulder, rested his on her waist, and began to guide her in slow steps, humming the rhythm himself. 1, 2, 3, he murmured. "Don't think. Just follow." At first, she stumbled, nervous laughter rising in her throat. But then she found his rhythm, the warmth of his palm steadying her, the brush of his breath near her temple. Her slippers slid across the tiles, and the world shrank until there was no storm, no mansion, no rules, only two figures swaying in the quiet. Her heart raced. She had never been held like this. Not carefully. Not as if she mattered. His gaze stayed fixed on her, not drifting to walls or clocks, only her face, her trembling lips, her wide eyes. "See," he whispered. "You can dance." She looked up at him, and something inside her broke open, something she had locked away to survive. The kiss. The dance slowed, steps smaller until they were no longer moving at all, only standing, breathing, hands still holding, eyes refusing to look away. Adrian lowered his head just enough that she could have pulled away. But Lena didn't. Her lips parted in hesitation, then courage. And when his mouth touched hers, it was not the kiss of a man who conquered boardrooms or countries. It was the kiss of someone who had been starved for gentleness. It was soft, careful, almost reverent. The towel slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. The kiss deepened, no longer an accident but a choice. Her body leaned into his, and his. Arms circled her as though protecting something fragile. The service hall, meant for staff and shadows, became the heart of the world for one suspended moment, the aftermath of a choice. When they broke apart, Lena's breath trembled in her chest. "This is wrong," she whispered. Adrian brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his thumb lingering against her skin. "Then let the world be wrong for one night." The words sank into her bones, and though fear gnawed at her, she did not step back. The night would change them both. It would give her memories she could not erase, and him regrets he could never outrun. But neither of them knew that yet. In that moment, They only knew the warmth of each other's hands, the taste of a kiss in the middle of a storm, and the silence of a mansion that had never held such a secret before. The storm outside had ended, but a storm inside them had only just begun. The vanishing. The sun rose over the coal estate as though nothing had changed, painting gold across the long windows and chasing away the last traces of the storm. Birds sang again from the drenched garden trees. The fountains in the courtyard bubbled with renewed life, and servants moved through the mansion's halls preparing for another day of silent service. But for Lina Morales, the world had already shifted. The morning after. She sat at the edge of the wide guest bed, her maid's uniform crumpled on the chair, her hair loose across her shoulders, and her hands trembling in her lap. The soft sheets still smelled of him, his cologne, his warmth, his presence, yet the space beside her was empty. Adrian was gone. He had left at dawn, after hours that blurred in her memory, whispers against her skin, the sound of his voice softening into something she had never imagined he could possess, the way he had held her as though she was breakable but treasured. And then morning had come. She had stirred awake to find the space cold beside her. She slipped into her dress, smoothed her hair, and followed the faint sound of his voice into the study. She had stopped in the doorway. Adrian stood at the tall windows, phone pressed to his ear, his back as straight and untouchable as marble. The softness of the night was gone. His face was carved into control once more. "Yes," he said into the phone, his tone clipped. "It was a mistake. It won't happen again." Lina froze. The words sliced into her chest. "A mistake." He turned. Then, and his eyes found her. For a heartbeat, something flickered there. Regret, conflict, but it was buried quickly beneath that calm, unreadable mask. "You're awake," he said evenly, like nothing had happened. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence pressed heavy between them. He reached to the desk and picked up a small black envelope, setting it on the table between them. "This is for you," he said. Her gaze fell to it. "What is it?" "Compensation," he replied. "For last night." The words knocked the air from her lungs. Compensation. Like she had sold something instead of given her heart. "I don't want your money," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Then take it as an apology," he countered, his jaw tight. Her throat burned. She pushed the envelope back toward him, her hand shaking. "You don't get to buy me. You don't get to erase me like that." "Lina, no." Her voice cracked, but her eyes blazed. "You don't get to say my name like it means something, and—" Before he could speak again, she turned and walked out. Each step echoed like a wound across the marble floor, and she did not look back. The decision. She returned to her small room in the servants' quarters, her chest tight, her hands clutching. The only thing she truly owned, a locket with her mother's picture inside. She packed her uniform neatly, folded her small pile of clothes, and tucked away her secret notebook, where she scribbled dreams of a life she thought she'd never reach. When her friend and fellow maid Rosa found her, Lina was already tying the last string on her worn duffel bag. "Lina, what are you doing?" Rosa whispered, wide-eyed. "I can't stay here," Lina said softly, fighting back tears. "Not after everything." "But where will you go?" "Anywhere," Lina murmured. "Anywhere he cannot find me." Rosa caught her arm. "Did he hurt you?" Lina shook her head, blinking hard. "No, that's the problem. He touched me like I mattered, and then told the world I didn't. I can't survive in a place where I'm nothing more than a mistake." Rosa's throat tightened, but she didn't try to stop her. She only hugged her tightly and whispered, "Then be brave, Lina. Go find the life you deserve." The secret weeks passed. Lina found herself in a smaller city, far from the towering Cole estate, far from Adrian's reach. She took a job at a bakery, working long hours, kneading dough and serving customers. The pay was small, but it was honest, and it kept a roof over her head. But soon her body began to change. At first, she thought it was stress, exhaustion, hunger. But then the sickness came in the mornings, fierce and unrelenting. Her hands trembled when she bought a test from the corner pharmacy. In the dim light of her little apartment, she stared down at the plastic stick as two pink lines appeared. Pregnant. Her knees weakened, and she sank to the floor, her hands clutching her flat stomach. 1,000 images rushed into her mind. The candlelit dance, his careful touch, the way he had looked at her before the words "mistake" had shattered it all. She whispered into the quiet, "It's not just me anymore." Tears blurred her vision, but beneath the fear was something else, a spark of fierce resolve. Whatever happened, she would protect this child. She would give them love, even if it meant doing it alone. The birth of hope, 9 months later, Lena screamed into the sheets of the hospital bed, sweat slicking her hair to her forehead, pain ripping through her body. Nurses moved swiftly around her, voices urging her to push, to breathe, to hold on just a little longer. And then, cries. Not one, but two. The nurse placed 2 tiny bundles in her arms, 2 boys, fragile and perfect, their skin warm against her chest. One had Adrian's sharp eyes already forming in his face. The other had his strong brow, his little fists clenched as if ready to fight the world. Lena wept, kissing their foreheads. Mateo, Elias, my miracles. She held them close, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it could burn down kingdoms. Whatever pain she had endured, whatever heartbreak she carried, it no longer mattered. These boys were her life now, her strength, her reason, and no one, least of all Adrian Cole, would take them from her. The vanishing complete, back at the Cole estate. Adrian searched quietly for her. He had told himself it was curiosity, not regret. But each time he passed the empty study, each time he caught himself staring at the space she had once stood, he felt something hollow gnawing inside. He ordered his staff to find out where she had gone. They told him nothing. Perhaps they didn't know. Perhaps Rosa had hidden her tracks. Perhaps fate had simply closed the door. And so Adrian convinced himself it was for the best. That night had been an error, a slip in judgment. She was gone now. His world was back in order. But late at night, alone in the silent mansion, he sometimes thought of her smile in the candlelight, the way she had said his name like it was human, not powerful. And miles away, in a cramped apartment above a bakery, Lena hummed a lullaby as she rocked Mateo and Elias to sleep. She had vanished, but her children carried the secret of that night in their eyes, and one day she knew secrets always found a way back. Fate intervenes. The city of Montera gleamed beneath the spring sun, its skyline a crown of glass towers, its streets alive with the pulse of ambition. Among those towers stood the brand-new Cole International Plaza, the jewel of Adrian Cole's empire. The newspapers had named it the heartbeat of Montera's future, and Adrian himself had flown in to oversee its launch. He told himself this trip was business, contracts, meetings, deals that would expand his reach into every corner of the continent. But when Adrian Cole stepped out of his sleek black car and looked at the crowd gathered in the hotel lobby, he felt something else, a hollow ache that no amount of marble and steel could fill. Lena's new life across town. Lena Morales stood at the reception desk of the modest Rosewood Inn, clutching a clipboard with trembling fingers. It had been 5 years since she fled the Cole estate. 5 years of working, saving, and raising her twin boys alone. Life was not glamorous, but it was steady now. The bakery job had led to an assistant position, and eventually she was offered work at the inn, where her warmth with guests quickly caught attention. She was now a junior event planner, a position that gave her just enough stability to care for Mateo and Elias. Her twins, now 5, were the center of her world. Mateo was bold and curious, always asking questions about the stars and machines. Elias was quieter, softer, but sharp-eyed, watching everything as though he carried secrets no one else could see. Both had their father's dark gaze and strong brow, features Lena had learned to hide with caps, curls, and distractions. She had never told them about Adrian. They only knew their father was far away. To her sons, she was mother and father, home and hearth. That was enough, or so she thought. The first glimpse. The Rosewood Inn was bustling that afternoon, its staff preparing for a partnership meeting with Cole International. Lena kept her head down, organizing floral displays and double-checking. Seating charts. "Careful with those lilies," she told a younger maid. "The fragrance can be too strong indoors. Spread them out with roses." Her hands moved quickly, but her heart skipped when she read the name on the guest folder she was holding. Adrian Cole. The letters blurred for a second. Her breath hitched. It can't be him. The Cole name was everywhere. On. Towers, hotels, news headlines. It didn't have to mean him. She pressed the folder to her chest and forced herself to focus. "Don't imagine ghosts," she whispered to herself, but ghosts were already walking through the doors. Adrian's. Arrival Adrian entered the lobby with 2 of his aides trailing behind, his presence pulling the air taut around him. Time had carved sharper lines into his jaw, his hair darker at the temples. But his authority was untouched. Guests turned their heads instinctively, staff straightened their spines. Lena froze behind the reception desk, her clipboard trembling in her hands. Her heart pounded so loud she was certain he would hear it. For 5 years, she had built her world brick by fragile brick, and in one moment, the man who had unknowingly given her heirs walked back into it. She ducked her head, turning sharply down the corridor before his eyes could sweep her way. But fate is merciless. The twins' curiosity. That same day, the twins were visiting the inn for a career day tour with their kindergarten group. Lena had hesitated, but the teacher had insisted it would be fun for them to see where their mother worked. Mateo darted across the polished floor, his small sneakers squeaking. Elias followed, clutching a tiny notebook where he liked to draw. "Stay close," Lena hissed, but the boys were too curious, too restless. And then it happened. Mateo, chasing a stray balloon from the decorations, barreled straight into a tall man near the entrance. The impact made Adrian pause mid-conversation. He looked down, prepared to scold, until his eyes fell on the boy. For a moment, the world stilled. The child's face, it was his own. The deep-set eyes, the stubborn curve of the mouth, the very same wrinkle in the brow when concentrating. He saw himself reflected in miniature, and his breath caught in his chest. "Easy there, champ," Adrian said, his voice softer than he expected. "Where's your mother?" Mateo tilted his head curiously, then smiled. "She's right over. Mama!" Though, collision of worlds. Lena appeared seconds later, her heart lurching as she saw Adrian crouched beside her son. The clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. Her gaze locked with Adrian's, and the years between them collapsed. Adrian's eyes narrowed, disbelief hardening into realization. "Lena," she went pale, clutching Mateo's hand, pulling Elias close. "We're late for the tour," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "Excuse us." Adrian rose slowly to his full height, his gaze flicking from her face to the children at her side. His jaw clenched. He did not need confirmation. The truth was written in every line of the boys' faces. "You disappeared," he said lowly, his voice a mixture of accusation and something she could not name. Lena's throat tightened. "Let go, Adrian, please!" But his hand reached, firm but not cruel, catching her wrist as she turned. The heat of his touch jolted her straight back to that night, to the storm, to the kiss she had tried to forget. "You can't run this time," he said quietly. Her eyes flamed with fear and defiance. "Watch me." She pulled free, gathering. Her heels clicking sharply as she vanished down the corridor. Adrian stood rooted to the marble floor, every muscle in his body coiled. He was not a man who believed in coincidence, and what he had just seen was no accident. He turned to his aide, his voice low and dangerous. "Find everything you can on Lena Morales. Tonight." Lena's panic back in the break room, Lena knelt. Beside her twins, her chest tight with panic. Mateo looked up innocently. "Mama, that man looked at me funny. Do you know him?" She forced a smile, brushing his curls back. "No, sweetheart. He's just no one important." But her trembling hands betrayed her. She pressed a kiss to Elias's forehead, whispering more to herself than to them. "He's not taking you. Not now. Not ever." Yet deep down, Lena knew the truth. Fate had intervened. The secret she had kept for 5 years was standing in the lobby, and Adrian Cole was not the kind of man who saw something and let it go. The battle of hearts. The night after the lobby encounter, Lena could not sleep. The Rosewood Inn's staff quarters felt too small, too fragile to contain her fear. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, watching the rise and fall of Mateo and Elias's little chests as they slept peacefully, their curls damp with sweat. From dreaming, her fingers trembled as they traced the locket at her throat. Inside was her mother's picture, a woman who had taught her resilience in the face of storms. Lena whispered to it like a prayer. "I kept them safe this long. I can't let him take them." But deep in her chest, she knew Adrian Cole was not a man who gave up. Adrian's resolve across the city, Adrian stood at the window of his suite at Cole International Plaza, the glittering skyline reflected in his dark eyes. He had not been able to shake the image of the boys, his boys. Every detail gnawed at him, the shape of their brows, the spark in their gaze, the way Mateo had spoken his mother's name with such trust. He clenched a glass of scotch in his hand, but it did not steady him. "They're mine," he murmured into the night. His aide, Marcus, stood quietly behind him, holding a folder. "We traced Lena Morales, sir. She's been in Montera for 5 years, works at the Rosewood Inn, single mother, no records of a father on file." Adrian's jaw tightened. "She hid them from me." Marcus hesitated. "Do you want to confront her directly?" Adrian turned, his expression a mask of steel. "No, not yet. I want everything. School records, medical history, every detail. If she thinks she can disappear again, she's wrong. I'll make sure of it." The unexpected visit. The next morning, Lena was packing lunches for the twins when a knock sounded at the door. Her heart skipped. No one knocked this early. When she opened it, Adrian Cole filled the doorway. Her breath caught. He was immaculate, in a dark tailored suit, his presence too large for the narrow corridor, his eyes fixed on her with a determination that made her knees weak. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, blocking the doorway with her body. "I came to see my sons," he said simply. "They are not your sons," she shot back, her voice breaking. "They're mine." From the small bedroom, a voice piped up. "Mama, who is it?" Mateo appeared, rubbing his eyes, Elias trailing shyly behind with his stuffed bear. Both boys froze when they saw Adrian. Adrian's gaze softened instantly. He crouched, his voice low, gentle. "Good morning." Elias peeked from behind his bear. "Are you the man from the hotel?" "Yes," Adrian said with a faint smile. "And I think we have a lot to talk about." Lena's chest constricted. "Enough," she snapped, pulling the boys back. You don't get to just show up at my door. Adrian rose slowly, his voice calm but laced with iron. You kept them from me for 5 years. Don't think you can keep doing it. Lena's hands trembled as she slammed the door shut in his face. She leaned against it, her heart racing. The boys stared up at her with wide, confused eyes. Who was that, Mama? Mateo asked softly. Lena forced a smile, though tears burned her throat. No one, baby. Just someone who doesn't belong here. But even as she said it, she knew the lie was fragile. The pressure builds over the next week. Adrian's presence seeped into their lives like an unshakable shadow. He sent gifts to the twins' school, custom backpacks, boxes of books, even a set of handmade wooden puzzles. Lena returned them all, furious. But the damage was done. Her son's eyes lit up with curiosity every time a delivery arrived. Why can't we keep them, Mama? Mateo asked, pouting. Because we don't take things from strangers, she replied firmly. But he's nice, Elias murmured, holding the puzzle piece he had secretly kept. The twins were too young to understand bloodlines, betrayal, or heartbreak. They only saw a tall man with kind eyes who made them feel important, and Adrian knew exactly how to use that. The confrontation one evening after work, Lena found him waiting outside the inn. He leaned casually against his car, but his eyes were sharp, relentless. Stop this, she demanded, clutching her bag tightly. You're confusing them. You're breaking into the little world I built for us. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. You built that world on a lie, Lena. You think love alone is enough? What about opportunities? Security? A future they deserve? Her eyes blazed. What they deserve is a father who doesn't treat them like a business deal. His jaw flexed. For a moment, something flickered in his gaze, hurt, maybe even regret. But it was gone in an instant. I'm not asking, he said quietly. I will be part of their lives. You can fight me, or you can stand beside me. But I will not be erased again. Her breath caught. She hated the way his certainty shook her. She hated that part of her, wanted to believe him. You can't buy your way into their hearts, she said coldly. He leaned in just enough that his words brushed against her ear. Then I'll earn it. Her chest tightened as he pulled back, his eyes holding hers with dangerous intensity, and she knew then the battle had begun. Not just for custody, not just for the twins, but for their hearts. The boy's innocence later that night, after she tucked the twins into bed, Mateo whispered, Mama? Yes, love. Why don't you like the tall man? Her throat tightened. Because sometimes people hurt others without meaning to, and Mama needs to protect you. Elias peeked up with sleepy eyes. But he makes me feel safe. Tears burned her eyes as she kissed their foreheads. I will always keep you safe. Always. But when she closed their bedroom door, her own heart cracked. Because for the first time she realized something terrifying. Her children were already beginning to love him, and love was the one weapon she could not protect them from.
The breaking point rain lashed against Montera that night, streaking the windows of the Rosewood Inn like tears. Inside, Lena Morales paced the small living room of her apartment, her hands clenched into fists, her chest heavy with a storm fiercer than the one outside. Adrian Cole had gone too far. That morning he had shown up at the twins' school unannounced, not with gifts this time, but with himself. Lena had arrived for pickup to find Mateo sitting proudly on his lap as he helped the boy build a paper airplane, while Elias leaned against his arm, shy but glowing with trust. The teacher had smiled nervously, assuming Adrian was a long absent, father finally trying to make amends. The sight had cut Lena to her core. She had pulled the boys away, her voice sharp, her hands shaking, but their protest had stabbed deepest. Why can't he stay, Mama? Why do you always make him go away? Now the questions echoed inside her, louder than the thunder outside. Adrian's determination across the city. Adrian sat in his suite, his hair damp from the rain, his jaw tight. His aide, Marcus, laid a file on the desk. "Everything you asked for," Marcus said quietly. "Birth records, school registrations, medical history. Both boys. No father listed." Adrian's hand trembled as he opened the file. The evidence was undeniable. Every record, every milestone. His sons had grown without him. "They are mine," Adrian whispered, his voice breaking on the word. "And she stole them from me." Marcus hesitated. "Sir, what will you do?" Adrian's gaze hardened like steel. "What I should have done from the start. I'll fight for them, with every weapon I have." The ultimatum, the next evening, Lena returned from work to find a sleek black envelope slid under her door. Her heart sank before she even opened it. Inside lay a custody petition. Her hands shook as she read the words, "Petitioner requests joint custody with primary decision-making rights." Her vision blurred when she reached his signature at the bottom, bold, decisive Adrian Cole. The note beneath was written in his hand. "You had your chance to tell me. You chose to run. Now I choose. Meet me tomorrow. We talk. Or the court decides." Lena's knees buckled and she collapsed onto the couch, the petition falling from her hands. The boys played with toy cars at her feet, blissfully unaware of the storm about to rip their lives apart. The confrontation. The following night, she stood outside the Cole International Tower, rain dripping from her umbrella, her chest tight with dread. She told herself she was only there to protect her sons. But her heart thudded like it was walking into battle. The receptionist didn't ask her name. She was expected. The private elevator carried her to the top floor, where Adrian waited in his vast office overlooking the glittering skyline. He didn't rise when she entered. He only looked at her, his gaze sharp enough to cut. "You came," he said. "You gave me no choice," she shot back, dropping the petition on his desk. "What is this? A threat? A punishment?" "It's reality," he said evenly. "You can't erase me from their lives, not anymore. You think dragging lawyers into this makes you a father?" Her voice cracked, but her eyes blazed. "They don't know you. They know me, the woman who stayed, the woman who raised them when you were too busy calling me a mistake." For a moment, Adrian flinched. The memory of that morning, the careless words spoken into his phone, flashed like a wound he had carved himself. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "But you never gave me the chance to make it right." "You didn't deserve it," Lena spat. His jaw tightened. "And yet they deserve me, my blood, my protection, my name. I won't let you deny them that." Her eyes filled with tears. "They don't need your name, they need love. Something money can't buy, Adrian." "Then let me prove I can give it," he said, stepping closer, his voice fierce but trembling at the edges. "Stop running. Stop treating me like the enemy. We can do this together." She shook her head, her heart splitting. "You don't know what love costs. You've never had to pay its price. And you think you're the only one who has suffered?" His voice dropped lower, rawer. "Do you know what it's like to live with emptiness? To look at everything you own and know the only thing missing is the one thing you can't buy? I've lived with that for years, Lena. And now I know why." Her breath caught. His words pierced deeper than she wanted them to. But before either of them could speak, again the sound of small voices shattered the silence. The twins interrupt. "Mama?" Both turned sharply. In the doorway stood Mateo and Elias, their curls damp from the rain, their eyes wide with confusion. Rosa, Lena's friend and the twins' sitter, must have followed her and brought them inside when she realized where Lena had gone. Adrian's face softened instantly. His entire presence shifted as he crouched to their level, his voice gentle. "You're still awake," he said. Mateo stepped forward, his little fists clutching his toy car. "Are you fighting with Mama?" Lena froze. Her throat ached as Elias looked up at her with wide, pleading eyes. "We don't like when you fight." Adrian glanced at Lena, then back to the boys. His voice broke as he said, I don't want to fight with your mother. I want to be with you. The twins exchanged a look only brothers could share. Then Matteo walked forward and pressed the toy car into Adrian's palm. You can play, he said simply. Adrian's breath caught. His large hand closed gently around the tiny car. He looked at Lena, his eyes shimmering with something dangerously close to vulnerability. For the first time, she didn't see the billionaire who had broken her heart. She saw a man kneeling before, his children trying desperately not to lose them. The breaking point. That night, after Rosa took the boys home, Lena remained in the office with Adrian. The storm outside had eased, but the storm between them had not. You can't keep forcing your way in, Lena whispered. You'll tear their world apart. And doing nothing will tear mine apart, Adrian said hoarsely. Don't you understand? They are the only thing that's ever mattered more than myself. And I will not lose them. I will not lose you. Her chest tightened, her resolve shaking. You already did, she whispered, though the words burned on her tongue. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the echo of the rain. And in that silence, both of them knew the truth. The battle was no longer just about the twins. It was about wounds, regrets, and a love neither had admitted but both still felt. The breaking point had come, and nothing would ever be the same again.